The sun was just rising over the wide golden plains of the African savanna. The breeze was soft and the sky was painted in warm colors of orange and pink. Birds sang quietly in the distance, and the world slowly began to wake. In the heart of this wild land was a young wildlife photographer named Daniel. He had left his city life behind a year ago to follow his dream, to live near the animals, to capture their true stories with his camera, and to protect them in any way he could. Daniel wasn't just a man with a camera. He had heart, a deep love for nature, especially for lions. Since he was a child, he'd been fascinated by their power, beauty, and the mystery in their eyes. Now he lived near a wildlife reserve in a small wooden cabin, spending his days tracking the lion prides from a distance, learning their paths, and capturing moments no one else could see. One morning, as Daniel walked through a narrow trail, near the edge of the reserve, he heard something strange. It was a sound he hadn't heard before. Not a growl, not a roar, but a mix of pain and fear. He froze. The sound came again, louder this time. It was close. He slowly followed the sound, through the tall grass, his heart beating faster, and then he saw it. A full-grown male lion was lying on the ground, tangled in thick barbed wire that had somehow been left behind by illegal hunters. The wire was wrapped around the lion's front leg and part of its chest. Blood soaked the grass beneath him. The lion growled low and deep, struggling, but every movement made the wire cut deeper. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The lion was one of the reserve's most well-known males, the leader of a pride he'd been following for months. His name, Daniel had learned from the rangers, was Kazi, a proud, strong lion, but now he was in pain, weak and scared. Daniel knew this was no ordinary situation. There was no time to wait for help. The nearest ranger post was 2 hours away. If he left, the lion could die from blood loss, or worse, a poacher could find him first. But if he stayed and tried to help, he could be killed. He looked into Kazi's eyes. There was pain, but also something else. Trust? Swallowing hard, Daniel took off his backpack and slowly knelt on the ground. "Easy. Easy, boy," he whispered, even though his hands were shaking. "I'm not going to hurt you." He remembered everything he had learned about lion behavior. No sudden moves. Keep your eyes open, but don't challenge. Stay calm. He pulled out a small pocket knife from his kit, the only thing he had that could cut through the wire. The barbs were sharp. One wrong move and Kazi could react badly. But Daniel began to work. One slow cut at a time. Kazi didn't attack. He growled sometimes, twitched when the knife got too close, but he didn't strike. Maybe he understood. Maybe he felt Daniel's fear in his heart. The process felt like forever. Daniel's fingers were bleeding. His arms ached. Twice Kazi roared in pain, and Daniel had to freeze, thinking it was the end. But somehow the lion calmed again. The bond between them, strange and silent, grew stronger with every minute. Finally, after nearly an hour, the last piece of wire was removed. Kazi's leg was badly injured, but free. The lion didn't stand. He just looked at Daniel. Their eyes locked for a long moment. Then, slowly, Kazi dragged himself away into the tall grass, disappearing into the savanna. Daniel sat back trembling, covered in sweat, blood, and dust. He couldn't believe what had just happened. That night he couldn't sleep. All he could think about was whether Kazi had survived, whether he had reached his pride, whether he had been attacked by hyenas or left to die alone. The thought broke his heart. 2 days passed, then 3. No sign of Kazi. Daniel searched the plains every day, looking through his camera lens, hoping for a glimpse of that golden mane, but nothing. On the 4th morning, something strange happened. Daniel stepped outside his cabin and saw fresh paw prints in the dirt. Big ones, lion-sized. They circled the cabin, not once but several times, and they led into the bush. His heart raced. He grabbed his camera and followed the trail. The prints led him to a small clearing near the river. And there, standing like kings and queens under the rising sun, was Kazi's pride. 3 lionesses, 4 young cubs, and behind them, limping but alive, was Kazi. Daniel gasped. Kazi stepped forward slowly. He didn't roar, he didn't run, he simply walked toward Daniel, his injured leg stiff, but his head held high. The lion stopped just a few feet away. Then something even more unbelievable happened. One by one, the lionesses and the cubs came forward, not to attack, but to sit beside Kazi. They all stared at Daniel in silence, as if they had come to see the man who had saved their leader. As if they remembered, Daniel didn't move. He could barely breathe. Kazi lowered his head once. A gesture, a thank you, a farewell. Then the pride turned and walked back into the wild. That moment would stay in Daniel's soul forever. He didn't take a photo. He didn't need to. Some memories are too sacred for a camera. From that day on, something changed in the savannah. The lions, once distant and careful, began to appear more often near Daniel's cabin. They never stayed long, but it was enough to know they felt safe around him, trusted him. He kept telling the story of that day, not to show off, but to remind the world of the bond that can grow between man and beast when fear is replaced by respect, when cruelty is replaced by compassion. If you're still listening, thank you. These stories matter, not just because they're wild or thrilling, but because they teach us something important about kindness, about courage, and about the deep connections that live in silence. If this story touched your heart, even a little, please consider liking and subscribing. It helps more people hear these forgotten voices of the wild. And remember, in a world full of noise, sometimes the softest acts of bravery are the loudest. Thank you for staying with me till the end. I'll see you next time, with another story that only nature could write.